Hey guys, tonight we drift into 16th century Venice, where furnace flames lick the pre-dawn fog over Murano's canals. You're swaddled in linen that smells of wood smoke and brine, born into a lineage where glass runs thicker than blood, and where a single spilled secret could sink your family's fortunes faster than a leaky gondola. Your grandfather's hands, already scarred from molten blobs, cradle you as he mutters about Cristallo future reality check. You'd probably faint from the furnace heat before lunchtime, or worse, accidentally reveal the cobalt recipe and get retired to a fishing boat. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Where's bedtime finding you tonight? Drop your city and local time below. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You squall into existence in 1512, 3 days after Epiphany, while ice glazes the canals outside. Your cradle rocks to the rhythm of paddle strokes from glassworkers rowing home after the night shift. Murano isn't just an island, it's a gilded cage. The Republic's Signoria banned glassmakers from leaving Venice in 1291, officially to prevent furnace fires in the city centre. Historians still argue whether it was fire safety or pure capitalism. Your father's workshop, Il Girasole, specializes in ice glass, crackled vessels mimicking frost. Mainstream fact: Venetian guilds guarded techniques like state secrets. Leaking the Latimo milk glass recipe meant treason charges. Quirky tidbit: your aunt swears crushed mummy skulls deepen red glass hues. She smuggles Egyptian shipments labeled spices. You grow up hearing whispers about the fuga, the disastrous 1474 escape attempt, when Master Andrea Zuccato tried selling secrets to France. His punishment? Guild enforcers broke every bone in his hands with glass-blowing pipes. Bellissimo. By age 4, you're polishing defective beads in the courtyard. Sunlight fractures through reject goblets stacked like drunken soldiers, painting rainbows on damp cobblestones. The air thrums with furnace roars and the hiss-crack of annealing ovens. Guild spies lurk everywhere. Even the priest takes notes during confession. Your grandfather teaches you the first rule: trust no one, especially not Germans. Joking, mostly. One afternoon you lick salt-crusted seaweed off the dock while he recounts how Doge Enrico Dandolo traded 10,000 glass beads for Byzantine silks in 1204. A bead bought a duke's ransom back then, he chuckles. Now, I'd trade them all for a nap. Humidity glues your tunic to your back as a gondola piled with soda ash glides past. The ash hauler winks, a gesture that'll cost him 3 teeth tomorrow when your uncle spots him bribing a furnace stoker. Ah, Venice, the brine and wood smoke scent from the canals follows you like a shadow as you turn 10. Today's the day. Il Girasole's furnace room awaits. Your father grips your shoulder, fingers calloused as pumice stone. Breathe shallow, he murmurs. The air bites here. You push open the oak door reinforced with iron bands, and heat slams into you like a physical wall. It's not just warmth, it's a living thing, thick and greedy, sucking the moisture from your eyes before you blink. 12 men move in the amber gloom, silhouetted against the central furnace's maw. Its roar drowns the canal bells. Mainstream fact: Murano furnaces burned at 1,400 DDC hotter than lava. Quirky tidbit. Apprentices whispered that master glassmakers pissed in the mix to prevent bubbles. Historians still argue if this was myth or a very salty solution. You stumble over a pile of cogole, purified pebbles from the Ticino River, nearly planting your face in a tray of cobalt powder worth more per ounce than saffron. "Eyes up, ragazzo," barks Uncle Luciano, staring a vat of molten silica with a 2-meter iron rod called a cane. The mixture glows like captured sunset. "One splash, and we'll scrape you off the floor with a trowel." Sweat stings your eyes, but you don't wipe it. You've seen the shiny keloid scars on Carlo the Gatherer's arms, where droplets hit flesh and stuck. 3 furnaces dominate the room: the grande for melting, the tempera for cooling, and the muffalola for slow annealing. Your job? Haul sacks of Levantine soda ash to the mixing bench. Each sack leaves a ghostly white trail on the soot-blackened bricks. A crucible of molten glass bubbles near the ground. Master Enzo, the maestro di fornace, dips his blowpipe, rotating it slowly. He gathers a glowing gob la pasta, then rolls it on a bronze slab. He blows. A bulbous shape swells like a living thing, glowing cherry red. He snips the neck with shears that hiss against the heat. You flinch as a shard of cooling glass pings off the ceiling, a sound like frozen rain hitting stone. "Relax," scoffs Pietro, the youngest journeyman. "If it hits you, it's already cold." A lie. Thermal shock fractures could fly like daggers. He nods at the annealing oven. "See those cracks? We call them Venetian tears." You don't laugh. Earlier you'd seen him bury his blistered hand in a barrel of barley flour, an old trick to draw out the burn. A bell clangs. Lunch. You slump against the sun-warmed outer wall, gnawing rye bread smeared with anchovy paste. The furnace roar dulls to a purr. Through the workshop's high windows gondolas glide like black swans. Pietro joins you, peeling off his asbestos-lined gloves. "They say the Doge's got a goblet so thin, it sings when you stroke the rim," he whispers. "Made it by blowing glass inside a mould lined with wet seaweed." You nod, remembering your grandfather's tales. Mainstream fact? Venetian Cristalio was Europe's first clear glass, rivaling rock crystal. Quirky tidbit. Some claimed sheep urine stabilized the mix, hence the pungent barrels behind the workshop. As you rise, ash dusts your tunic like grey snow. You touch the door handle. Still warm. Back inside, the heat feels less foreign, almost familiar, almost home. "Trust no Germans," echoes your grandfather's voice. You glance at the new ash hauler, Hans from Regensburg. He smiles, showing a gold tooth. You look away. Your shoulders scream before the first bell even tolls. Dawn's grey light filters through the workshop's high, soot-streaked windows as you heave a bucket of soda ash, gritty, white, and deceptively heavy. Each scoop feels like lifting wet marble. The ash comes from Syria, shipped in barrels stamped with crescent moons, and it's the lifeblood of Il Girasole. Without it, the silica won't melt properly. Mainstream fact: soda ash lowered silica's melting point from an impossible 1,700 DGC to a merely flesh-searing 1,400 DGC. Quirky tidbit: apprentices claimed swallowing a pinch cured stomach aches. It did not. Ask Giorgio, who spent a week vomiting chalky foam. You dodge Marco the stoker as he feeds olive logs into the grande furnace. Embers skitter across the floor like angry fireflies. "Watch the feet, Piccolo," he grunts. Molten glass loves leather soles. You remember Carlo's boot? Melted into a shiny, twisted sculpture after last month's spill. The ash bucket's rope handle bites into your palm. 1, 2, 3 steps, you dump it onto the mixing bench, where Uncle Luciano blends it with powdered quartz and crushed seashell. The dust blooms upward, coating your tongue with a bitter, alkaline tang. Fasta! Luciano snaps. This isn't a passeggiata. You glance at Hans, the German ash hauler, sweating as he rolls a barrel. He flashes that gold tooth again. Trust no Germans. The real terror isn't the heat, it's the paths. Narrow aisles snake between furnaces, stacked with blowpipes, wet wooden moulds, and buckets of quenching water. Journeymen stride like gods, clutching glowing orbs of glass on iron rods. A red-hot gather swings perilously close to your ear. Sss. A droplet hits the wet floor near your foot, instantly hardening into a razor-sharp teardrop. Pietro laughs, missed you by a breath. Lucky day. You don't feel lucky. Your tunic sticks to your back, soaked through with sweat and ash sludge. Historians still argue whether Venetian workshops intentionally hired left-hand apprentices. Some claim it reduced collisions in tight spaces. Your right hand, obviously. Lunch brings respite but no peace. You huddle in the courtyard, gnawing on salt cod wrapped in wilted cabbage leaves. Hans sidles up, reeking of brine and something sharper. Vinegar? The ash, he murmurs in broken Venetian, nodding toward the barrels. From Aleppo, see? Very fine. But troppo cara. He leans closer. I know a Cypriot trader, half the price. He slips a dried fig into your hand. It feels heavy, forbidden. Grandfather's voice echoes. Secrets sink faster than lead crystal. You pocket the fig but say nothing. Later, while scrubbing crucibles with sand and vinegar, a chore that leaves your fingers raw and reeking, you overhear Enzo raging about gritty batches. Someone's diluted the ash with lime dust. Suspicion falls on the new Sicilian stoker. You stay silent, fig burning a hole in your pocket. By dusk, your arms tremble like overstretched glass. You're hauling your last bucket when a shout erupts near the tempera furnace. A gatherer's rod snaps, sending a molten blob the size of a melon crashing onto the bricks. It splatters, throwing fiery tendrils in every direction. You freeze. But Pietro yanks you behind a sand barrel. Breathe, boy. It's just vitrum sanguinis. Blood glass, cheap stuff. The blob cools rapidly, crusting over like lava. Deep red, streaked with black. Looks like a dragon's heart, eh? Pietro grins. You don't grin back. One tendril had landed where your foot had been seconds before. As the night crew arrives, you stumble into the alley. Rain slicks the cobblestones, washing ash from your skin. Murano's lamps reflect in the canals like drowned stars. Hans passes you, rolling an empty barrel. He doesn't smile this time. You touch the fig in your pocket. Half the price. You toss it into the dark water. It sinks without a sound. Midnight finds you pressed against the workshop's back wall, ear to a crack in the plaster where cool canal air whispers in. The furnaces bank to embers breathe like sleeping dragons, radiating a low, comforting thrum through the stones beneath your bare feet. Master Enzo's snores rattle from his upstairs chamber, a rhythmic counterpoint to the drip-drip of condensation falling from the annealing oven vents. Tonight, you're not stealing sleep, you're stealing secrets. specifically the secrets of Cristallo. Mainstream fact: Cristallo's legendary clarity came from purifying quartz pebbles with manganese dioxide, dubbed the glassmaker's soap. Quirky tidbit: rumor claimed true masters added powdered unicorn horn, usually narwhal tusk, smuggled via Bruges, to dispel bubbles. Historians still argue whether the secret ingredient was crushed quartz or crushed hopes. You hold your breath as two journeymen, Silvio and Renzo, linger by the cooling tempera furnace, their faces lit by a single tallow dip. Silvio stirs a small crucible nestled in the residual heat. He insists the frita must rest 3 full moons, Silvio mutters, voice hushed. The frita, the pre-melted mixture of silica and flux, glows faintly. 3 moons makes it thirsty, Renzo counters, tapping a clay tablet covered in symbols. See this? The Doge's own maestro uses lagoon mud, dried and sifted finer than a nun's conscience, mixed in before the second firing. Absorbs impurities. Your heart hammers. This is treason whispered on soot-stained lips. Grandfather called Cristallo recipes, more guarded than the Doge jewels. One slip, and the guild's enforcers, the Giustizia Vecchia, would break more than hands. A floorboard creaks overhead. You freeze, the rough plaster digging into your cheek. Enzo's snores stutter, then resume. Renzo dips a thin iron rod into the crucible, pulling out a thread of molten glass. He lets it cool slightly, then snaps it. Too brittle, he grumbles, like the master's patience. Silvio leans closer. What if, the bohemian rumor, adding lead, just a whisper? Renzo recoils, Azesco. Lead makes it heavy. Cristallo is light, like angel breath, like, he gestures vaguely towards the dark canals, like that fog out there, but solid. You recall the single Cristallo goblet in your house, kept locked in an oak chest. Holding it felt like cradling frozen air. Mainstream fact: Venetian Cristallo was Europe's first truly clear, colourless glass, making Murano fabulously wealthy. Quirky tidbit: apprentices were told staring too long at molten Cristallo could steal their sight, replaced with visions of glass demons. Silvio sighs, blowing out the candle. Darkness swallows them, leaving only the furnace's dull red eye. Their footsteps fade towards the pallid room. You stay pressed against the wall, the overheard words swirling in your head. 3 moons, lagoon mud, angel breath. Your stomach growls, reminding you of the meagre supper of bean porridge. The forbidden knowledge feels heavier than a sack of cogoli, sweeter than stolen honey. Could lagoon mud really be the key? The canals outside were thick with it, foul-smelling, silt-laden. The idea seems absurd, almost laughable. Yet Renzo sounded certain. As you finally creep towards your own straw pallet in the storeroom, you pass the small locked cabinet Enzo calls his library. Inside, are clay tablets and parchments, the workshop's guarded recipes. You've seen him unlock it with an iron key worn around his neck, even in the bath. The lock looks ancient, intricate. A sudden, daring thought flickers. What if you could see inside? Just one, to compare Renzo's mud theory to the master's sacred script. The risk is unthinkable. Discovery meant ruin, exile, or worse, hands shattered like poorly annealed glass. Yet the whisper of Cristallo, pure and perfect, echoes louder than fear. You touch the cold iron of the cabinet, angel breath. Tomorrow you'll watch the mud gatherers in the dawn light, just in case. The furnace sighs, a deep, sleeping sound. Secrets, like glass, cool slowly in the dark. July arrives like a furnace blast. The air over Murano hangs thick and still, smelling of hot stone, stagnant canal water, and the ever-present tang of wood ash. Even the gulls seem lethargic, their cries muffled by the oppressive humidity. Inside Il Girasole, it's beyond infernal. The main furnace roars, a constant hungry beast devouring olive logs, radiating waves of heat that make the very air shimmer. Sweat streams down your face the moment you cross the threshold, stinging your eyes, soaking your thin linen tunic until it clings like a second skin. Your triple-layered gloves, thick, clumsy things of boiled linen stuffed with wool scraps, feel like torture devices. Your fingers swim in sweat inside them, slippery and slow. Mainstream fact: Venetian workshops operated year-round, but summer was notorious for heatstroke and accident. Apprentices dropping like flies wasn't hyperbole. Quirky tidbit: some masters insisted hanging wet seaweed over the doors cooled the air. It mostly just added a rotting fish stench to the mix. Historians still argue whether the high summer mortality rate was due to heat or the increased likelihood of rushed, careless work under duress. You're hauling a heavy wooden mould, carved for a commissioned set of wine goblets, towards Master Enzo's bench. The mould is awkward, digging into your shoulder. Your gloves are unbearable. Just for a moment, a single foolish moment, you peel them off, stuffing them hastily into your belt. The relief is instant and blissful. Cool air kisses your damp palms. You shift the mould, grunting. Nearby, Pietro is gathering a glowing mass of vitro retorti, a swirling, multicolored glass, his own triple gloves firmly on despite the sweat dripping off his chin. Shoulders square, piccolo, he calls, not unkindly. That mould costs more than your life. You grimace, adjusting your grip. The furnace's roar seems louder, more insistent. Then it happens. A sound like a wet seed popping. A tiny, insignificant droplet of molten glass, no bigger than a lentil, flies from the lip of the crucible Silvio is skimming. It arcs through the shimmering air, a minuscule, incandescent spark. Time slows. You see it tumbling, glowing white, hot. You instinctively flinch back, but the heavy mould anchors you. The droplet lands squarely on the exposed back of your left hand, just below the knuckles. The pain isn't immediate. There's a split second of strange pressure, like someone pressing a hot coin against your skin. Then it ignites, a searing, white-hot agony that shoots up your arm, locking your breath in your throat. You gasp, a strangled sound. You stare, horrified, as the tiny bead of molten glass burns into you. It sizzles faintly against your flesh, smoking, fusing instantly. The smell is acrid, terrifyingly intimate, like your own skin cooking. You drop the mould with a clatter that echoes in the sudden silence of your own shock. Pain floods your nervous system, sharp and absolute. Subito. Enzo's roar cuts through your daze. He's across the room in 3 strides, grabbing your wrist with a grip like iron. He doesn't ask. He shoves your hand, palm down, into a nearby bucket of quenching water meant for cooling tools. The hiss is loud, and the sudden cold is a shock, almost as violent as the burn. Steam rises. The agony lessens marginally, replaced by a deep, throbbing ache. Enzo pulls your hand out. The water is murky. The tiny bead of glass is still there, fused to your skin, now a dull cloudy grey against the angry, blistered red flesh surrounding it. It looks like a grotesque pearl embedded in raw meat. Gloves. Enzo snarls, his face inches from yours, eyes blazing hotter than the furnace. Triple, linen, always. You think this is a game? You think sweat is worse than this? He jabs a finger at your hand. The pain pulses with your heartbeat. Pietro looks away, grim-faced. Silvio mutters something about green wood popping. Mainstream fact? Molten glass around 1400 EGC instantly causes third-degree burns, fusing to skin and underlying tissue. Quirky tidbit? The standard remedy involved honey, spider webs, and crushed snail shells, plastered over the wound. Effectiveness debated, smell guaranteed. Enzo drags you to the courtyard, barrel of barley flour. He plunges your hand in deep. The cool, powdery substance provides a blessed numbness, coating the wound. Leave it buried. Count to 100. Slowly. His voice is low, dangerous. And thank every saint your foolishness only cost you skin, not bone. He stalks back inside. You stand there, hand buried in flour, trembling, the initial shock giving way to a sickening wave of nausea and shame. You can still smell the cooked flesh. The tiny lump of foreign glass feels enormous, a permanent brand of your stupidity. Pietro brings you a ladle of vinegary water. Hurts like hell, hey? Welcome to the club. He rolls up his sleeve, showing a constellation of shiny white scars on his forearm. My baptism by fire, yours is just smaller, more embarrassing. He manages a weak grin. Historians will argue whether we were brave or just dumb. Probably both. You count slowly. 57, 58. The barley flour cakes around the wound. The throbbing lessens to a dull, insistent roar, mimicking the furnace inside. You look at your glove, dangling stupidly from your belt, triple linen, stuffed with wool, unbearably hot. Suddenly, they seem like the most precious armor in the world. You pull them out with your good hand. They feel different now, not just protection from heat, but from your own carelessness, from the ever-present flying fragments of catastrophe in a place where beauty was born. From blistering danger, you slip the good glove back on your right hand. The left will have to wait. The lesson, however, is seared in deeper than the glass. Congratulations, apprentice, you're officially a glass worker. The scar will prove it. The barley flour scar itches like a trapped insect beneath your bandage, a constant, low-grade reminder of your July folly. But tonight, the itch is secondary. Tonight, the furnace is banked low. Murano sleeps off the excesses of Carnival's opening day, and the only sounds are the distant drunken songs echoing across the black water and the frantic hammering of your own heart. You crouch behind the stacked sacks of Levantine soda ash, the rough jute scratching your cheek, watching the silhouette of Master Enzo finally stagger upstairs after too much Prosecco. His snores soon rattle the ceiling beams, a basso continuo to the nervous symphony in your ears. The workshop is bathed in deep shadow, lit only by the dull red ember glow of the grand furnace, and a single sliver of moonlight slicing through a high window. Is time. Laguna mud. Mainstream fact. Venetian guild archives were often secured in locked cabinets within the workshop itself, accessible only to the master. Quirky tidbit? Some masters wrote recipes in code, using symbols based on constellations visible from Murano. Historians still argue whether these codes were practical security or theatrical intimidation. You move like smoke, feet finding the familiar ash-dusted paths between benches and barrels. The air is thick with the residual heat and the sour-sweet smell of cooling glass and wine dregs. The locked cabinet, Enzo's library, squats ominously in the corner near the annealing ovens. Its dark oak panels seem to absorb the faint light. The iron key hangs, as always, around Enzo's neck upstairs. Impossible. But last week, while scrubbing vinegar solution onto a scorch mark near the cabinet, you'd noticed something. The bottom right panel, warped slightly by decades of heat and damp, had a tiny gap where the wood had shrunk away from the frame. Just enough space, maybe. You pull the thin, flexible iron Borsello rod from your belt, a tool used for shaping small glass loops. Kneeling, you insert its tip into the narrow gap near the floor. It catches. You apply slow upward pressure, feeling the ancient wood groan in protest. Sweat beads on your forehead, mingling with ash dust. Too loud? You freeze, listening. Enzo's snores hiccup, then settle back into their rumbling rhythm. You push again. A faint creak. The panel bows inward slightly. Another push. A sharp crack. Not the wood, but the sound of your own pulse crashing in your ears. The gap widens. Maybe 2 finger widths. Enough. Reaching into the darkness, your fingers brush parchment, then the cool, smooth surface of a clay tablet. You fumble blindly, heart hammering against your ribs. Please, please. Your fingertips trace incised markings, symbols, not letters. You pull out a small, thick tablet, gritty with dust. Moonlight catches its surface, a series of looping lines, dots, and a crude drawing that looks like a lumpy pile beside it, scratched deeply, fangy, mud, laguna mud. You clutch the tablet to your chest, cold against your sweat-damp tunic. Relief is a cool wave quickly replaced by icy terror. Put it back. Now. But curiosity is a stronger furnace. You risk pulling out a scrap of parchment. Unfolding it carefully, you see a list written in Enzo's spidery hand. Gogoli di Ticino, pagati 3 volte, soda di Andrea, ossido di manganiri, luna piena, standard prestaglio base. Then below underlined, Fanchi Specco, Solo Mariana Bassa, Secca 7, Gianiro, Cetacea, Fino cum farina, Miramud. Only low tide, dry 7 days, sift fine as flour? So Renzo was right, it was mud. But Specchio, mirror? You think of the thick, silty sludge dredged from certain stagnant corners of the lagoon, where the water lay still as glass. Historians might argue whether Specchio referred to the mud's reflective quality when wet, or was just a poetic flourish. A floorboard groans directly above you, Enzo's room. You freeze, breath trapped in your throat. The snoring stops. Silence. Agonizing seconds stretch. Then a muffled cough, the rustle of bedding and the blessed, rhythmic snoring resumes. You shove the parchment back into the dark cavity with trembling fingers. The tablet, you need to see. You scramble towards the sliver of moonlight near the water barrel. Holding the tablet up, you trace the symbols. A wavy line, water, a half sickle, moon, tide, the lumpy pile, mud, then a sequence of dots and dashes. Below, another symbol, an eye, or maybe a bubble. The meaning swims before your eyes. Was it a quantity, a timing, a warning? Grandfather's voice hissed. Secrets are vipers. Hold them too long, they bite. Mainstream fact. Manganese dioxide glassmaker's soap was indeed used to decolorize glass, but impurities could turn it pink or purple. Quirky tidbit. Some masters insisted that manganese had to be gathered under a full moon for maximum potency, but excellent for markups. The distant splash of an oar in the canal startles you. Time's up. You dash back to the cabinet, slide the precious tablet back into the darkness, and push the warped panel roughly back into place. It doesn't sit flush anymore. The gap is wider, a beacon of guilt. You grab a handful of ash and soot from the floor, rubbing it frantically into the fresh wood scar, hoping to mask it. Tomorrow, Enzo would notice, or maybe he wouldn't. Maybe the Prosecco would blur his vision. You retreat to your palette, the tablet's symbols burning behind your eyelids. Wavy line, half moon, pile of mud, eye/bubble, fangispecchio, mirror mud. The secret felt heavier, colder than the stolen fig, and infinitely more dangerous. You curl up, the scar on your hand throbbing in time with your heart, listening to the drunken songs fade and the gentle lap-lap of the lagoon against the workshop's fountain. Sleep, when it comes, is filled with dreams of sinking into bottomless, reflective mud. Canal bells clang midnight, but Murano doesn't sleep. It cackles. Outside Il Girasole's bolted doors, carnival madness erupts. Drunken shanties bounce off moonlit water, firecrackers pop like overstressed glass bubbles, and the sweet rotten stench of fried frittelle pastries oozes through the keyhole. You, however, breathe not freedom but linseed oil and metal polish. Master Enzo, paranoid as a cat in a kennel, locked you in with a stub of tallow candle and a cruel command. Polish every tool. Twice. Mainstream fact? Venetian carnival masks granted anonymity so complete nobles could mingle with fishmongers. Guild secrets travelled faster in such chaos. Quirky tidbit, revellers pelted each other with scented eggshells filled with rosewater, or sometimes sewer mud. Historians still argue whether the lock-ins were about theft prevention or punishing apprentices for existing. Your scar throbs beneath its linen wrap as you scrub Pietro's favourite Borsello rod. The bronze feels icy, mocking the feverish glee outside. Each stroke echoes in the cavernous dark. Scritch, scratch, scritch, a metronome to distant laughter. You imagine the baker's daughter, Lucia, dancing in Piazza San Marco, her hair threaded with pearls like dew on cristallo. Earlier she'd slipped you a honeyed fig wrapped in carnival paper. For the silent night guarding his dragon, she'd whispered. The paper now sits under your palate, smelling of almonds and impossibility. You dip the rag into rancid linseed oil. The candle gutters, stretching shadows into long-fingered ghosts across the annealing ovens. A particularly loud bang rattles the door. Fireworks? Or a drunken reveller stumbling into a gondola? You jump, knocking over a jar of pumice powder. It spills like ghostly flour across the floor. Diavolo, you hiss, scrambling to scoop it up. Too late. A pale footprint glows near the water barrel. Your own damning evidence. Enzo would spot it at dawn. Mainstream fact, glass polishing used powdered pumice mixed with oil, creating a gritty paste that could grind imperfections smooth. Wakey tidbit. Apprentices whispered that if you polished a tool under a full moon, it absorbed calmness and produced fewer bubbles. Pietro swore by it. His tools did gleam eerily. The candle wick drowns in wax. Darkness thickens. Only the grand furnace's dying embers cast a hellish glow. painting the workshop walls blood orange. You fumble towards the cold hearth, guided by memory and the clang of your toe against an abandoned mould. Outside, a woman's shriek of laughter pierces the night, sharp as broken glass. You slump against the furnace bricks, still warm, and unwrap Lucia's fig. The honey sticks to your teeth, achingly sweet. In the gloom, Renzo's words about fungi specchio surface, only low tide. You picture the mudflats at dawn, slick and silver, gulls stabbing for crabs. Could silt really purify crystal? The stolen clay tablets, symbols, swim before you. Wavy line, half moon, lumpy pile. Scholars debate. Some claim mirror mud, referred to reflective pyrite flecks in lagoon silt. Others insist it was marketing nonsense. A new sound slices through the revelry, rhythmic scraping at the workshop's canal-side window. You freeze, fig halfway to your mouth. A shadow blocks the grimy pane. 2 taps, pause, 3 taps. The signal Lucia invented last summer when delivering stolen biscotti. Your heart vaults. You scramble over stacked timber, ash puffing underfoot. Outside, bobbing in a dented skiff, Lucien grins behind a cheap Bauta mask. Her eyes glitter in the moonlight. Guardian of the underworld, she teases, holding up a wineskin. Brought you liquid courage. You wrench the window open, canal damp kissing your face. Enzo will flay me alive if he finds you. He's snoring off Prosecco at Zanni's tavern, she scoffs, pushing the wineskin through the bars. Drink. Carnival's no fun alone. The rough wine burns your throat, warm and reckless. Lucia leans closer, her mask slipping. They say the Doge's ball has a chandelier made of 1,000 cristallo teardrops, like frozen starlight. You tell her about the droplet seared into your hand, your carnival jewel. She traces the bandage gently. Stupid boys and their fires, she murmurs. For a heartbeat, the workshop's oppressive silence lifts. Then, clatter. A loose tile slides off the roof, shattering in the alley below. Lucia gasps, vanishing into shadow like a startled fish. The wineskin slips from your fingers, hitting the floor with a wet thud. Silence crashes back. You stare at the spreading wine stain, black as guilt in the gloom. Enzo's wrath would be volcanic. You grab a sack of soda ash, dumping it frantically onto the puddle. It foams, stinking of vinegar and panic. Outside, the laughter fades. Dawn isn't far. You relight the dying candle stub with trembling hands. Back to the tools. Scritch, scratch, scritch. The Borsello rod gleams now, cold and accusing. Lucia's almond scent lingers, tangled with linseed oil and spilled wine. Carnival's chaos recedes, leaving only the polished ghosts of iron and bronze, waiting for a master's return. You pick up another tool. The candle flickers, drowning again. In the dark, your scar pulses like a second heart. The air in Il Girasole hangs thick and silent, charged like glass about to shatter. Donato Farier stands near the annealing oven, a patron draped in damask that costs more than your life's wages. His perfume, cloves and ambergris, wars with the workshop's familiar sense of ash and hot metal. His eyes, sharp as a raven's, fix not on Master Enzo, but on you, on the simple wine goblet cooling on the bronze marver. Your goblet, your first commission. Mainstream fact? Patrons often watched crucial stages of glass making, believing their presence warded off bad luck, or ensured they weren't cheated. Quirky tidbit? Some insisted on whispering prayers to Saint Lucy, patron saint of light, while the glass was gathered. Historians still argue whether this was piety or a desperate hedge against thermal shock. You feel the blowpipe's wooden handle slick with your sweat, still vibrating in your memory. The gather had felt right, a molten honey gold blob of vetro giallo. Enzo had nodded, a rare flicker of something in his eyes. Fallier wants sturdy, simple, no frills, sturdy, simple. Words that sounded easy until the molten glass hung heavy on the end of your iron, radiating heat that made your scar throb. You'd blown, the bubbles swelling like a held breath, shaped it with wet cherry wood blocks, the steam hissing like an angry cat, trimmed the rim with shears that felt suddenly clumsy, all under Fallier's unblinking gaze. Pietro had muttered, "Just pretend he's a very ugly statue." But statues didn't tap pearl-buttered sleeves impatiently. Now it rests, cooling slowly in the tempera oven's residual heat. The gold glass deepens as it hardens, catching the light like trapped sunset. It looks passable, sturdy, simple, but your gut churns. You remember the feel of the gather. Had it cooled slightly too much before you blew? Was the rim uneven? Fallier takes a step closer, his shadow falling across the marva. He doesn't speak, he just looks. You can almost hear the crystalline lattice structure groaning as it contracts. Glass sings as it cools, Enzo always said. A high, pure note only masters here. You strain your ears, silence. Or is that just the blood roaring in them? Mainstream fact. Rapid or uneven cooling causes thermal stress, leading to fractures, sometimes hours later. Quirky tidbit? Apprentices swore drinking milk before blowing made the glass less likely to crack. Utter nonsense, but great for calcium intake. An apprentice piece? Fallier finally asks Enzo, his voice smooth as polished onyx. His gaze flicks to your bandaged hand, then back to the goblet. The implication hangs in the air. Damaged goods? Enzo puffs his chest. The boy has steady hands when he remembers his gloves. A pointed glance at your scar. This giallo is from our finest batch. Notice the depth? Like liquid amber. He taps the marva near the goblet's base. Solid, no seed bubbles. Worthy of the Fallier table. Fallier leans down, peering. His breath stirs the dust motes dancing in a sunbeam. He doesn't touch it. Not yet. The critical moment approaches, transferring it to the muffola for the slow, controlled annealing that could take hours, even days. This is where countless pieces betrayed their makers, fracturing with a sound like a dropped bell. Your knuckles whiten. You recall Lucia's honeyed fig, the stolen glimpse of the mud tablet focus. Historians debate whether master glassmakers could truly feel stress points, or just relied on brutal experience and prayer. Right now, you'd pray to every saint in the calendar. Pietro nudges you, holding the long, two-pronged pontello rod. Ready, artista? His grin is tight. This is your moment. You dip the pontello tip into the small furnace kept for attachments, gathering a tiny bead of molten glass. Your hand trembles. Steady. Simple, you touch the hot bead to the base of the goblet where the blowpipe was snapped off, fusing the pontello to it. The heat sears your face. Fallier watches. Enzo holds his breath. You lift the pontello, the goblet now suspended from its tip. It feels terrifyingly heavy, alive. One jolt, one uneven step, and the thermal shock. You move, slow, deliberate, one foot in front of the other, on the familiar path to the brick-lined muffola oven. The gaping mouth of the annealing chamber yawns before you. You hear every grain of ash crunch under your boot. Feel the weight shift on the rod, see the gold glass gleam. Flawless, for now. You lower the pontello, guiding the goblet gently onto the fireclay shelf inside the muffola. You detach the rod with a practiced twist. The goblet stands alone, glowing softly in the dim heat. Intact, you withdraw the pontello and step back. The workshop exhales. Valier nods once, a curt dip of the chin. Acceptable for an apprentice. He turns to Enzo. The set of 6 by Friday. He sweeps out, trailing cloves and unspoken pressure. Enzo claps a heavy hand on your shoulder. It feels like a reprieve. Solid, simple. You didn't embarrass the house. He gestures towards the muffola. Now, pray to Saint Lucy it survives the night. And Pietro, the maestro, get the boy a rag. He's sweating like a smuggler in church. Pietro tosses you a cloth, winking. See, told you, sweat-proofing, essential skill. You wipe your face, your legs suddenly weak. The goblet glows, a small, perfect sun captured in gold glass. Solid, simple, still whole, for now. The scent of cloves lingers, mixed with the sweet tang of relief and the ever-present fear of the crack that might still come. You glance at the scar on your hand. Tonight, it feels less like a brand of shame, and more like an entry fee. The cloying scent of cloves from Donato Falier's visit has barely faded when a new tension coils through Il Girasole, thick as furnace smoke. Whispers slither like eels among the stacked timber and cooling goblets. Germans. Spies. Murano's secrets for sale. The Republic's paranoia, usually a distant drumbeat, now pounds against the workshop walls. Mainstream fact? Venice's infamous Council of 10 employed a vast network of informants, offering bounties for reports of industrial espionage. Influence, crooking bounties for informants, offering bounties for reports of industrial espionage. Quirky tidbit? Some believed foreign agents disguised themselves as itinerant friars, their pious robes hiding stolen glass recipes in hollowed-out Bibles. Historians still argue whether the threat was exaggerated to justify draconian guild controls, or if Murano truly bled secrets like a cracked crucible. You feel the weight of stolen knowledge, the Fangi Specchio tablet symbols etched in your mind like hot coals in your pocket. Every glance feels loaded. When Hans, the German ash hauler, rolls a barrel too close to the mixing bench, Uncle Luciano snaps, "Largo, eyes on your own dirt." The mantra echoes, now less a jest and more a chilling directive. Pietro polishes tools with unusual ferocity. "Heard they caught a Fleming near the Fornace Vecchia," he mutters, not looking at you. "Tried bribing a stoker with Rhine wine. They found pieces of him floating towards the Lido." You shiver despite the furnace heat. Pieces, like poorly annealed glass shattering. Mainstream fact. Punishments for espionage ranged from mutilation to drowning in the lagoon weighted with stones. Quirky tidbit. Guild enforcers were rumoured to use glass shards in their interrogation methods. Historians find no evidence, but the fear was potent. The air crackles. Work becomes a tense pantomime. Journeymen cluster, speaking in low, rapid bursts, falling silent when apprentices drift near. Enzo inspects the annealing muffler more often, his hand lingering near the key at his neck. You catch him examining the warped panel on his library cabinet. running a calloused thumb over the slightly widened gap you'd tried to mask with soot. He says nothing. His silence is worse than shouting. You hold soda ash, scrub tools, avoid Hans's path, and feel the stolen mud secret burn. It's Lucia who offers a fragile lifeline. One mist-damp dawn, before the furnace roars awake, you meet her by the bakery's rear door. The smell of rising dough and wood smoke is a balm. She presses a warm, linen-wrapped loaf into your hands. "Papa's new rye," she whispers, eyes darting down the alley. He says it's sturdy, like your goblet. She heard. Pride flickers, quickly doused by the spy panic tightening your chest. They're watching everyone, Lucia. Hans, the Germans. She touches your bandaged hand, her fingers flour-dusted and cool. Then give them nothing to see. Be smoke. She slips a small, damp lump of terracotta clay into your palm, alongside the bread. For your thoughts, bake them silent. Her meaning dawns slowly. A message, baked hard, untouchable. Historians debate whether clandestine love notes were common in kilns, but fragments of inscribed terracotta are found near old workshops. Back in the storeroom, hidden behind sacks of kogeli, you press the damp clay flat. What to say? Poetry feels absurd amidst the fear. A warning, too dangerous. Your stylus, a bent copper wire, hovers. Finally, you scratch simple, urgent symbols. The wavy line, Laguna. The half-moon, Bassa Maria, low tide. The lumpy pile, Fangi. And beside it, a crude, hopeful sun. Find the mud at dawn. Proof the secret existed. Proof you saw for her eyes only. You press the cool clay against your lips, imprinting a faint, desperate kiss Lucia might recognize, might laugh at, might understand. Mainstream fact. Terracotta messages needed slow, low-temperature baking to prevent cracking and preserve inscriptions. Quirky tidbit. Some believed kiln-fired messages carried the spirit of the fire itself. Passionate, enduring. The risk is monstrous. Baking it in Il Girasole's annealing oven, suicide. But the bakery's bread oven, perfect. Low, steady heat. You slip the tile into the warm center of Lucia's rye loaf, sealing it inside the crust like a hidden heart. At lunch, you leave the loaf conspicuously near the workshop's water barrel. Pietro eyes it hungrily. Sharing piccolo? Your throat tightens. Promised it to the cat, he snorts. That mangy beast eats better than us. Lucia appears moments later, ostensibly to collect empty flour sacks. Her fingers brush the loaf. A flicker of understanding in her eyes. She tucks it under her arm and vanishes. Hours crawl. The furnace roars. Hawes hauls ash, his gaze sharp. Enzo barks orders with a new edge. Did Lucia bake it? Did the tile crack? Did her father find it? Every creak of the door is a potential doom. Near dusk, as you sweep ash, Lucia reappears. She places a small, warm terracotta tile beside your broom. Cooled, hard, intact. Your symbols are there, fired permanent. And beside your hopeful sun, she's scratched a tiny, perfect star. No words. Just starlight and mud. Proof received, proof kept. The terror doesn't vanish, but it recedes, like a tide revealing solid ground. You pocket the tile, its rough surface warm against your leg, a silent pact, baked in fire. When Hans passes, rolling an empty barrel, he doesn't smile. You meet his gaze just for a second. Smoke. Be smoke. You turn back to your sweeping, the tiny star a secret shield against the gathering dark. The fired terracotta tile is a rough, warm weight against your thigh. Lucien's tiny star, a secret talisman warding off the worst of the workshop's chill. But the air in Il Girasole remains thick with suspicion, curdling into something darker, resentment. Pietro's eyes, once merely sharp, now glint like fractured glass when they land on you. The grudges of years, fetching his tools, enduring his mockery, absorbing his casual cruelties, simmer just beneath his sweat-slicked skin. Your success with the Fallier goblet was salt in a wound you hadn't known you'd opened. Mainstream fact. Journeymen often fiercely guarded their status, viewing promising apprentices as threats to their own advancement within the rigid guild hierarchy. Quirky tidbit? Some believed envy could literally curdle molten glass, causing bubbles and flaws. Pietro's recent batches had been unusually cloudy. Historians still argue whether the intense competition fostered innovation or simply poisoned workshops. It starts subtly. A crucial pair of shears goes missing, minutes before you need to trim a delicate Latimo vise lip. You find them later, buried under discarded coloured glass, slightly bent. Distrato, Pietro shrugs, not meeting your eyes. Then, the soda ash for your mixing batch feels grittier than usual. Your next gather develops tiny seeds, trapped air bubbles, ruining a delicate stem. Enzo's glare is volcanic. Careless boy, ash costs gold. You glance at Pietro innocently polishing a pontil rod nearby. His knuckles are white. Mainstream fact. Contaminants like lime dust or damp ash could indeed introduce bubbles or weaken the glass structure. Quirky tidbit. Apprentices accused of sabotage were sometimes forced to drink a glass of water mixed with their own flawed glass dust. Effectiveness as punishment high, as remedy zero. The final straw is the commission, a set of 6 intricate vetra fili goblets for a wealthy Genoese merchant. Thin ribbons of white glass twisted through clear crystal. Enzo assigns Pietro the complex twisting. You, elevated slightly by the Fallier success, are tasked with preparing the flawless crystal gathers and managing the annealing schedule. It's a fragile dance of heat and timing. Pietro's jaw tightens when Enzo gives the order. His vengeance crystallizes. You work late, ensuring the Maffola oven holds the perfect, steady heat for the delicate pieces. You mark the schedule on a slate. Reduce heat by 1 log every 3 hours. Exhausted, you finally stumble to your pallet. You wake to pre-dawn greyness and a cold dread. The workshop is too quiet, too cool. You rush to the Maffola. The fire is banked low, far too low. Only embers glow. The schedule slate is wiped clean. 6 goblets sit inside. Their once fluid ribbons now frozen in grotesque tension. They look sick, strained. One wrong move. Arrives, whistling. He sees your face, sees the cold oven. Problem, Piccolo? His voice drips false concern. Overslept, did we? Annealing is an art, requires vigilance. His eyes flick to the empty slate. Mainstream fact. Insufficient annealing time or incorrect cooling rates caused internal stress, making glass prone to spontaneous shattering, sometimes days or weeks later. Quirky tidbit. Stressed glass was said to emit a faint, high-pitched scream. Only dogs could hear. Pietro's mangy workshop dog had been whining earlier. Enzo arrives, takes one look. His face darkens like storm clouds over the lagoon. Who banked the fire? His voice is dangerously quiet. Pietro steps forward, the picture of injured pride. I checked at midnight, Maestre. The boy was snoring. The fire was strong. He must have... He trails off, looking meaningfully at you, then at the cold oven, then at the fragile, doomed goblets. Qualcuno non ha sorvegliato la fiamma. Someone didn't watch the flame. The accusation hangs, poisonous. Your throat closes. Denial is useless without proof. Enzo's gaze bores into you, disappointment warring with fury. The Genoese commission is ruined, reputation damaged, losses steep. Pietro's revenge is perfect, professional, and utterly deniable. Historians still argue whether the guild's justice system favoured masters and journeymen over apprentices, or if it was merely brutally efficient at assigning blame. The goblets must come out. Enzo gestures curtly. Tu? Bring them. The ultimate test, the ultimate punishment. Removing stressed glass from the annealing oven required nerves of Cristallo itself. One jolt, one gust of cold air. You take the long, padded tongs. Your hands, slick with sweat, tremble. Pietro watches. A faint, cruel smile playing on his lips. Let him break them. Let him prove his clumsiness. You reach into the muffola. The warmth is feeble. The first goblet feels terrifyingly light, terrifyingly brittle in the tong's grip. You lift it, inch by inch. Clear crystal, white ribbons twisted like frozen agony. You breathe shallowly. Smoke. Be smoke. You move with glacial slowness across the workshop floor towards the cooling rack. Every creak of the floorboards is a potential death knell. Pietro's smile fades slightly, replaced by a flicker of unease. You set the first goblet down. It sits, silent, intact. One by one, you retrieve them. Each transfer is an eternity. Each placement on the rack, a minor miracle. Sweat stings your eyes. The fifth goblet, as you lift it, emits the faintest ping. A hairline crack snakes up from the base. It holds. Barely. You set it down gently beside its brothers. The sixth, the largest, feels different. Heavier? Or just your exhaustion? Halfway to the rack, a cold draught snakes through a cracked window pane. The goblet twitches in the tongs. A sound like a sigh. Then a jagged fissure explodes across its belly. Not a shatter, a surrender. It splits cleanly in two, the upper half sliding off to smash on the bricks with a sound like 1,000 tiny bells dying. Crystal shards skitter across the floor, catching the weak dawn light. Silence. Profound and terrible, you stare at the wreckage. Pietro lets out a dramatic gasp. Enzo closes his eyes, a muscle ticking in his jaw. The loss is tangible. The blame, in Enzo's eyes, settles squarely on you. Clean it up, he grinds out, turning away. Then start mixing ash. We have 6 more to make. You will pay for the silica. Pietro claps slowly, 3 times. Sardonic, final, bravo, piccolo, molto, fragile. He saunters off. You kneel amidst the glittering ruin, the terracotta tile heavy in your pocket. Lucia's star feels cold now. The victory of saving 5 feels hollow, ash bitter. Pietro's vengeance wasn't about destroying everything. It was about ensuring you broke the piece that mattered most, proving your supposed incompetence, binding you to the loss. You pick up a curved shard, sharp enough to draw blood. The cut wouldn't hurt half as much as the slow, satisfied burn in Pietro's retreating back. The lesson is seared deeper than any furnace scar. In Murano, Revenge is best served cold, precise, and delivered by the victim's own trembling hands. You pocket the sharpest shard. Not today, Pietro, but soon. The scent of decay isn't just in the canals anymore. It curls through Murano's alleyways like a diseased fog, sweet, cloying, and utterly wrong. La peste. The word hangs unspoken, heavy as a lead crystal goblet. Il Girasole feels hollowed out. Silvio's palate lies empty, stripped bare. Renzo coughs into his sleeve, a wet, rattling sound that sends journeymen edging away. Even the furnace roar seems subdued, muffled by the suffocating dread. Mainstream fact. Venetian plague responses included quarantining ships for 40 days, quarantina, burning victims' belongings, and walling up infected houses. Quirky tidbit? People stuffed plague doctor beaks with juniper berries, myrrh, and dried rose petals, hoping pleasant smells warded off miasma. Spoiler, they didn't. Historians still argue whether the plague spread primarily through fleas, miasma, bad air, or divine punishment. Work doesn't stop. Death is bad for business, but poverty is worse. Enzo, his face gaunt beneath its usual ruddy sheen, barks orders with a new, brittle edge. The commission isn't for goblets or vases, it's for eyes. Glass eyes. A morbid specialty of Murano, whispered about near the annealing ovens. Per una nobildonna, Enzo mutters, holding up a small painted ivory disc, a cast taken from the empty socket of some unseen, wealthy mourner. Hazel, with a fleck of gold near the pupil. Perfetto, no flaws. Mainstream fact. Venetian glassmakers produced intricate prosthetic eyes as early as the 16th century, using enamel paints on curved glass blanks. Quirky tidbit, some believed wearing a Murano eye could grant the deceased's sight to the living, hence the black market premium. The task falls to you and Pietro. The air between you crackles with unresolved venom, but the plague imposes a fragile, temporary truce born of shared fear. You prepare the tiny, flawless crystal blanks, gathering minuscule amounts of clear cristallo, blowing delicate hollow spheres barely larger than a hazelnut, then carefully cracking them open and grinding the edges smooth on a lapidary wheel. The dust stings your lungs, a constant gritty reminder of mortality. Pietro, unusually silent, meticulously mixes enamels, ochre, umber, specks of real gold leaf suspended in oil, his hand steady but his face pale beneath a sheen of sweat that isn't just from the furnace. He avoids your gaze. You notice the tremor in his fingers as he picks up a fine sable brush. Toi no, he rasps, pushing the painted ivory disc towards you. Match it. Exactly. Historians debate whether the high lead content in these enamels poisoned the artisans slowly, contributing to the glassmaker's shakes. You lean close, squinting. The disc shows a complex iris pattern, veins like tiny rivers of rust. You dip the brush, your own hand unnervingly steady compared to Pietro's. The first stroke of hazel enamel glistens on the curved glass. It's painstaking, microscopic work. The furnace purrs. Renzo coughs again, a sound like tearing parchment. Outside a bell tolls slowly, relentlessly. The morto bell, counting the day's harvest. You add a fleck of gold near the pupil. Pietro watches, his breathing shallow, rapid. A bead of sweat drips from his temple onto the workbench. He doesn't wipe it. Too dark, he mutters. Though it's a perfect match. The nobildonna won't want mud in her skull. The tension snaps. Then you paint it. You snap back, pushing the brush towards him. He flinches as if struck, knocking over a vial of turpentine. The sharp smell blooms, mixing nauseatingly with the furnace heat and the distant scent of decay. He grabs the brush, but his hand spasms. A thick blob of dark umber enamel drops onto the pristine hazel iris, spreading like a black pupil dilating in terror. Merda! He snarls, staring at the ruined eye blank. His face is chalk white now. He sways, bracing himself against the bench. You see it then, what you'd missed in the gloom, and your own resentment. The dark, swollen lump beneath his ear, just above the collar of his tunic. A bubo. Plague's unmistakable signature. Time stops. The furnace roar fades. Your gaze locks on the grotesque swelling, then flicks to his terrified, sweat-slicked face. Fear, sharp and cold, pierces your anger. Report him. The law is clear. The Provatori alla Sanità would come. They'd drag him to the Lazzaretto Vecchio, the plague island. They'd burn his pallet, maybe the whole workshop corner. Enzo would be fined, shut down. Il Girasole would die. You might starve, or catch it anyway. Lucia's bakery is 2 canals down. Pietro follows your gaze, his hand instinctively flying up to cover the bubo. His eyes, wide with panic and shame, plead silently. Don't. The ruined glass eye stares up from the bench, its hazel iris swallowed by the spreading black blotch of enamel, a grotesque mirror of the horror unfolding. Mainstream fact. Plague buboes, swollen lymph nodes, were most common in the groin, armpit or neck. Quirky tidbit. Desperate treatments included strapping live chickens or plucked pigeons to the buboes to draw out the poison. Effectiveness, 0. Messiness, high. Enzo's voice booms from the other side of the workshop. Falier's shipment, where are my occhiali di vista? Stop dawdling! Pietro jerks, wiping sweat from his brow with a trembling hand, pulling his collar higher. He grabs a rag, frantically smearing the ruined enamel, making it worse. Accident, he croaks, not looking at you. I'll make another. Quickly. He stumbles towards the mixing bench for more crystal, his steps unsteady. The secret hangs between you, thicker and more poisonous than the turpentine fumes. Report him, and doom the workshop, maybe yourself. Stay silent, and risk the plague creeping through Il Girasole like smoke, finding Lucia, finding you. The ivory disc mocks you from the bench, a dead woman's socket waiting for an eye you can't make, watched by a dying man you can't save. The mortal bell tolls again. Pietro fumbles with a blowpipe, his breath coming in ragged gasps. You pick up a fresh glass blank. The decision isn't made. It settles over you, cold and inevitable. Silence. For now. You dip your brush into the hazel enamel, your hand steady, your heart hammering against ribs that suddenly feel as fragile as the glass before you. The plague isn't just outside, it's breathing the same ash-thick air. The crash echoes like shattering crystal, long after Pietro hits the floor. One moment he's frantically gathering molten glass, a grotesque parody of his old skill, the blowpipe trembling in his plague-shaken grip. The next, his legs buckle, he crumples, the pipe clattering, the glowing gather splattering across the bricks in a shower of incandescent sparks that fizzle out on the damp ash. Silence crashes down, heavier than the Doge's lead seals. Only Renzo's wet, ragged breathing and the furnace's low growl remain. You stand frozen, the stolen Fanghi Specchio tablet burning like guilt in your hidden pocket. Mainstream fact: plague victims often experienced sudden, catastrophic collapse as the infection overwhelmed the body. Quirky tidbit: some believed the sound of shattering glass could scare away plague demons. Pietro's gather obligingly provided the sound effect. Historians still argue whether the rapid progression was due to pneumonic plague or sheer physiological terror. Enzo is across the room before the last spark dies, not with concern, but with the furious speed of a man watching his livelihood ignite. He doesn't touch Pietro. He stares down, his face carved from stone, eyes fixed on the telltale bulge beneath Pietro's sweat-soaked collar, now grotesquely visible. The workshop holds its breath. Journeymen shrink back. You see Carlo make the sign of the cross against the evil eye. Enzo's voice, when it comes, is chillingly calm. Silvio, Renzo, out. Now, bar the door from the outside. Mainstream fact: immediate isolation was the first brutal step in plague containment. Quirky tidbit: masters sometimes fumigated workshops by burning vinegar-soaked rosemary on hot shovels. Smelled nice, killed nothing but morale. Silvio and Renzo scramble, relief warring with fear on their faces. The heavy oak door thuds shut. The bar drops with a final echoing thunk. Trapped. Just you, Enzo, and the dying journeyman at your feet. The air curdles with the sour stench of fear, sickness, and cooling glass. Pietro moans, a low animal sound. Enzo finally looks at you, not with accusation, but with a terrifying, calculating intensity. You knew. It's not a question. His gaze flicks to the spilled gather, then back to your face, missing nothing. Before he fell, you saw the mark. The stolen tablet feels like a lodestone dragging you down. Denial is pointless. You nod. Once, your throat sealed shut. Enzo's lips thin. He crouches, not beside Pietro, but near the scattered shards of the ruined glass eye Pietro dropped earlier. He picks up a curved fragment, holding it to the dim light. The flawed hazel iris stares blankly. A waste, he murmurs almost to himself. Good cristallo, good enamel. He drops the shard. It pings on the brick. Pietro twitches. Enzo stands, his shadow engulfing the fallen man. De proveturi. You begin, the word thick and unfamiliar. Enzo cuts you off with a sharp gesture. The provveditori mean quarantine, fire, fines. Il Girasole sealed for 40 days. Ruin. His eyes drill into yours. He dies here, quietly. Then we burn him in the fornace piccola tonight. Ashes to the lagoon. No bell, no record, just gone. The cold brutality of it steals your breath. Pietro's whimper underscores the plan. Murder by neglect, erasure. Mainstream fact. Unofficial plague disposals did occur, driven by panic and economic survival, though fiercely condemned by authorities. Quirky tidbit: rumours persisted of glass furnaces burning too cleanly, producing suspiciously white ash after such disposals. Historians still argue how widespread the practice truly was. Enzo points to the water barrel. Soak rags, cool his brow, make him comfortable. The order is a grotesque mockery of care. And you, his gaze sharpens, landing on the spot where Pietro had been trying to gather glass near the locked cabinet. What was he doing there? Spilling secrets with his last breath. Your heart stops. The Fanchia Specchio tablet feels radioactive. Did Pietro suspect? Was he trying to steal the secret for someone, or just desperate for something valuable to sell for a quack cure? Enzo steps closer to the cabinet, his hand hovering near the warped panel you'd forced. He runs a finger along the gap. His eyes narrow. He knows. He must know it's been tampered with. He turns his head slowly, his gaze locking onto yours again. Not accusing, knowing. Clean up this mess, he says flatly, gesturing at Pietro and the spilled glass. Then prepare the fornace piccola. Hot, very hot. He turns and walks towards his office, pausing only to snatch a bottle of grappa from a shelf. He doesn't look back. You kneel beside Pietro. His skin is furnace hot, dry as parchment despite the sweat. His eyes flutter open, unfocused, terrified. "Master?" he rasps. You wring out a rag in the cool water, placing it on his forehead. He flinches at the touch. The mud," he gasps, his voice a broken whisper. "Saw, Sibyl's, Hans, promised gold. For the Doge secret. The confession, fragmented by pain and fever, chills you deeper than the plague." Pietro, desperate and dying, had indeed been trying to steal the Fange Specchio secret. For Hans, for the Germans. Trust no Germans. The irony tastes like ash. Mainstream fact. Industrial espionage thrived during crises, exploiting desperation and lax security. Quirky tidbit? Dying confessions were considered particularly unreliable, often blamed on fever phantoms. You glance towards Enzo's closed office door. The grappa bottle glints dully on his desk. He knows Pietro tried to steal. He knows the cabinet was breached. He knows you knew Pietro was sick, and he's leaving you alone with the dying thief and a furnace to fire. The message is clear. Solve the problem permanently, silently. The terracotta tile in your pocket, Lucia's star pressing against your leg, feels like the only solid thing in a world dissolving into horror and moral quicksand. You dip the rag again. Pietro's breath hitches, a wet rattle deep in his chest. The fornace piccola waits, a small brick mar hungry for secrets and sins. Your hands, steady while painting a dead woman's eye, tremble now. The lines between victim, villain, and accomplice blur like overheated glass. You press the cool cloth to Pietro's burning temple. Comfort? Or the first step in a master's ruthless design? The workshop clock ticks, each second a grain of sand falling, counting down Pietro's life, and perhaps your own innocence. The lagoon outside laps softly, indifferent. Murano's beauty, it seems, is forged in fires far colder than any furnace. The scent of burnt wool and charred bone lingers in the fornace piccola's bricks, a phantom fingerprint no vinegar scrub can erase. Pietro's absence is a cold draught in the workshop, filled not with silence, but with the too loud scrape of tools and the frantic, brittle energy of men avoiding each other's eyes. You move through the days like a poorly annealed goblet, outwardly intact, vibrating with internal stress. Enzo's gaze holds yours a fraction too long when he passes you the delicate blanks for the noble Donna's replacement eyes. His trust is a cage now, its bars forged in shared guilt and the lingering stench of the small furnace. Mainstream fact, the demand for high-quality glass prosthetics surged during plague times as survivors sought replacements for disfiguring buboes or secondary infections. Quirky tidbit, some believed wearing a Murano eye could ward off future plague bouts, creating a lucrative, if morbid, panic market. Historians still argue whether the famed clarity of Venetian prosthetic eyes was due to superior glass or clever marketing exploiting grief. The work consumes you. Blowing the tiny perfect spheres requires hyperfocus, a welcome numbness. You lose yourself in the rhythm. Gather, blow, crack, grind. The repetitive screech of glass on the lapidary wheel drowns out Pietro's final rattle. Enzo handles the enamelling himself now, his thick fingers surprisingly deft, mixing pigments with a grim precision. Hazel, gold fleck, perfetto, no flaw. He places the finished eye in your palm. It's cold, unnervingly light, the painted iris vivid under the workshop's grimy light. For the Contessa's courier, 10 ducats. He doesn't mention Pietro, doesn't mention the furnace. The transaction feels dirtier than hauling ash. Mainstream fact, Venetian glass eyes were exported across Europe, often transported in lead-lined boxes filled with silk wool. Quirky tidbit, couriers sometimes wore a single eye themselves as a walking advertisement, creepy but effective. Historians still debate whether the gold fleck was real gold or cleverly layered yellow enamel. Demand grows like a fever. Murano whispers of the sight of San Marco, eyes so lifelike they fooled priests at confession. Orders flood in, a sea-green eye for a disgraced admiral, a brown one flecked with amber for a spice merchant's wife, a simple blue for a gondolier's child scarred by smallpox. Enzo delegates more eyes to you. You craft them mechanically, the process a shield against memory. But the eyes watch you, stacked in padded boxes. Their painted pupils seem to follow you through the gloom. You find yourself avoiding direct light, fearing their glassy stare. Lucia notices the shadows under your eyes, the jumpiness when a crucible bubbles too loudly. You look like you've seen a ghost, she murmurs one dawn, pressing a warm focaccia into your hands. The scent of rosemary usually comforts you. Today it smells like the herbs burned after Pietro. Mainstream fact, lead poisoning from handling enamels and fluxes could cause tremors, insomnia, and paranoia, symptoms easily mistaken for guilt or plague anxiety. Quirky tidbit? Apprentices whispered that unfinished eyes absorbed the workshop's sorrows, weeping invisible tears at night. One fog-drenched morning, a man arrives, not a noble's courier, dressed in plain dark wool, smelling of salt and stale tobacco. He bypasses Enzo, finding you polishing a batch of simple blue eyes. Heard you make things that help people. Disappear, he says, voice low. He slides a heavy purse onto the bench. It clinks. 2 pairs, brown, unremarkable, no flecks, no veins, forgettable. His gaze is sharp, assessing. A spy? A criminal? Someone fleeing the Proveditore? The eyes in your hand feel suddenly heavy, ethically tarnished. Enzo materializes silently, his hand closing over the purse. Forgivable work requires forgettable features, he states smoothly. The price doubles for anonymity. The man nods curtly. Enzo pockets the purse, turning to you. You heard the man, brown, plain, invisible. Historians still argue whether Murano's famed anonymous eyes were a myth or a lucrative black market sideline, exploiting the Republic's shadow economy. The Commission twists something inside you. Crafting beauty for the scarred felt like restitution. Crafting anonymity for the wicked feels like complicity. That night, shaping the bland brown irises, you deliberately make one pupil slightly uneven, a tiny flaw, an invisible rebellion. Enzo wouldn't notice, the buyer wouldn't dare complain, but you know. The uneven pupil is your silent scream into the void Pietro left. A minuscule crack in the perfect amoral surface ends. You pack the flawed pair with the perfect ones. Lucia's terracotta star tucked in your pocket feels cold. The lagoon outside sighs, thick with secrets and the ashes of choices you never wanted to make. The eyes, blank and brown, stare sightlessly from their box. Tools for vanishing, like Pietro, like your conscience, like the boy who entered Il Girasole, dreaming of frozen sunlight, not furnaces that consumed men and morals alike. You close the lid. The floor is set. The mould of silence holds. The workshop keys land in your palm with a weight colder than Murano's winter kernels. Enzo's final breath, a wet rattle smelling of grappa and corrupted lungs, still hangs in the air of his cluttered office. Plague or lead-poisoned enamels? The medico shrugged, pocketing his fee. Venice takes what she's owed. Now Il Girasole is yours. The triumph tastes like ash. Mainstream fact, guild workshops often passed to senior apprentices via a dead man's key ceremony, bypassing formal inheritance if no family existed. Quirky tidbit? Some believed the first piece blown by a new master absorbed the soul of the old one. Yours better not look like a grumpy Enzo. Historians still argue whether Venice's economic decline began with Ottoman competition or guilds drowning in internal debt. You unlock Enzo's battered ledger, its pages brittle as dried seaweed. Columns of numbers swim. Orders, deliveries, payments. Then you see it. The red ink, not the vibrant rosso veneziano from copper oxides, but a deep, staining crimson of deficits. Debts coil like serpents. 200 ducats to the Livanin soda ash merchant, 150 to the Ticino Cogoli supplier, 75 in overdue guild fees, plus interest accruing like barnacles on a sinking hull. The Fallier goblets, paid half price due to delayed delivery. The Genoese commission, never settled after Pietro's departure. The ledger's spine cracks as you slam it shut. Your inheritance isn't a furnace, it's a financial noose. Solid, simple, you mutter, echoing Enzo's praise for your first goblet. Now you trade every cristallo tear for solid coin. Desperation drives you to the workshop's hidden corners. Behind a loose brick near the fornace piccola, the one that consumed Pietro's secrets, your fingers find rough sackcloth. You pull out a small, lumpy bag. Inside, spilling onto the soot-stained floor, catch the dim light. A dozen pigeon-blood-red rubies, each the size of a hazelnut. Your breath hitches. Hope flares, until you lift one. Too light, too cold. You tap it against your teeth. Clink. Not corundum glass. Exquisitely faceted, doped with gold chloride for depth, but undeniably fake. A master forger's final joke. Mainstream fact. Venetian glass counterfeiters pioneered leaded paste gems so convincing they flooded European markets, devaluing real stones. Quirky tidbit, con artists soaked fakes in goat's blood to mimic imperfections. Enzo's stash smells suspiciously barnyard adjacent. The absurdity hits. You're drowning in debt, clutching a bag of glorified paperweights. One ruby rolls toward the annealing oven. You picture Donato Fallier's face if you offered these as collateral. Ah, maestro. You mimic Enzo's gravelly voice. a small token crafted from dragon's tears and purest bankruptcy. The dark chuckle that escapes surprises you. 3 years hauling ash, dodging molten death, surviving plague and Pietro's vengeance. For this, a furnace, a mountain of bills and fake gems that wouldn't fool a myopic gull. Lucia finds you sitting amidst the glittering deception, the ledger open like a wound. She kneels, picking up a ruby, holds it to the window. Sunset bleeds through it, painting her cheek crimson. Pretty, she murmurs, like frozen fire. Frozen debt, you correct, gesturing at the ledger. Enzo owed half of Murano. These wouldn't buy a sack of flour. She turns the gem, watching light fracture. My father says Enzo supplied the Glassmakers' Guild banquet last year. All the goblets, gold leaf trim, very showy, gaudy. A desperate display, masking rot. Scholars debate, did Venice's obsession with luxury spectacle hasten its decline, or was it merely brilliant market? You scan the ledger again. Payments for lavish guild feasts. Orders for gilded chandeliers for bankrupt nobles. Enzo wasn't just in debt. He was performing wealth like a street juggler with lead balls. Lucia places the fake ruby back in your palm. Her finger traces your furnace scars. So melt them, she says simply. Your furnace eats sand, soda and secrets. Why not glass rubies? The idea is ludicrous. Genius. The gold chloride could tint a batch of premium Moroso Venetiano. The facets? Collect for the recycling pile. Waste not. You stare at the bag, fake wealth transformed into real pigment. A metaphor so thick you could blow it into a vase. You pocket a single ruby, a cremalion. The rest goes into a crucible scrap bucket. Arrivederci, dragon tears, you whisper. Time to become something useful. Night falls. You light a single tallow dip in Enzo's office. The ledger lies open. The debts remain solid and simple. But the path forward feels less like drowning, more like annealing, slow, careful, controlled heat applied to a fractured inheritance. You pick up a borsolo rod. It feels lighter. Or maybe your shoulders are just learning to carry the weight. Outside, a gondolier's song drifts across the black water, bittersweet and enduring, like Murano itself, like glass. You blow out the candle. The workshop breathes with you in the dark. 70 years bend your spine like a warped blowpipe, but your hands remember. The familiar furnace roar of Il Girasole, your girasole now, is a comforting thunder, deeper and steadier than your own heartbeat. Morning light, thick with lagoon mist, streams through the high windows, catching dust motes dancing above your grandson's dark head. Marco, 10 years old, all elbows and wide, eager eyes, just like you were, he grips the practice rod, a shortened, lighter version of the canna, with trembling reverence. Like this, Nonno? He asks, mimicking your stance near the grand furnace, its heat a familiar embrace. Mainstream fact: Venetian glass-blowing dynasties often spanned centuries, with techniques passed down through generations like sacred texts. Quirky tidbit: old masters claimed the furnace learned a family's breath, blowing smoother for bloodlines it knew. Marco's first gather does seem suspiciously cooperative. Historians still argue whether this was skill or sentimental nonsense. You adjust his grip gently, your scarred knuckles brushing his smooth ones. The old brand from Pietro's droplet, now just a pale, shiny patch, feels cool against his warmth. "Softer, Marco," you murmur. "It's not a sword, it's a whisper rod." He giggles, the sound bright as shattering cristallo. You guide his hands towards the glory hole's radiant heat. Feel it, like the sun's belly. He nods, eyes wide, cheeks flush. You remember Lucia's hands guiding yours decades ago, showing you how to knead dough with that same gentle firmness. The bakery's scent of rising bread still mingles perfectly with the workshop's ash and hot metal, a testament to the doorway you knocked through the shared wall years back, uniting furnace and oven. The debt? Paid slowly, steadily, not with fake rubies, but with honest glass. Sturdy goblets for taverns, durable lenses for scholars' spectacles, and yes, the occasional exquisite eye for those needing to face the world whole again. The Fanghi Specchio secret rests in a new, less warped cabinet. You used it once for a doge's commemorative bowl. It worked. Angel breath indeed, but the lagoon mud stays your secret. Some mysteries are more valuable shared with ghosts than the market. Marco gathers his first tiny blob of molten vetro giallo. It glows like captured honey on the rod's tip. He blows. A fragile bubble swells, trembling, iridescent in the furnace light. His breath is too quick, too sharp. The bubble wobbles, threatens to sag. "Easy," you whisper, steadying the rod with your own weathered hand beneath his. Like sighing across Lucia's hot bread. "Slow, slow," he slows. The bubble steadies, rounds out, a perfect miniature sun. A choked gasp of wonder escapes him. Not a shatter, a creation, his first. Scholars debate, is the true art in the complex Vita Roy a retorti, or in the perfect simplicity of a child's first breath made solid? You don't need historians for that answer. You see it in Marco's radiant face. He carefully snaps the bubble off onto a waiting punty rod. It's lopsided, thicker on one side, utterly imperfect. He holds it up, the golden glass catching the light. "It's lumpy, nonno." His voice wobbles. You take the punty rod, turning the tiny warm sphere. "Lumpy?" you scoff gently. "This isn't lumpy. This is character." You point to the thick part. "See? That's where your courage gathered. And this thin bit?" You tap the delicate curve. "That's your first careful breath. It's perfect, Marco, because it's yours." His smile could outshine Murano's grandest chandelier. Lucia appears in the connecting doorway, flour dusting her apron like snow. She sees the tiny golden bubble, sees Marco's face. Her eyes, still bright as the Adriatic sky, meet yours. No words needed. Just the quiet hum of the furnace, the distant lap of the canal, and the weight of years worn smooth, like sea glass. The warmth radiating from the banked furnace isn't just heat now. It's the slow, steady pulse of the workshop itself, breathing in time with your own weary bones. Marco's excited chatter has softened into yawns, Lucia's hand resting gently on his shoulder as she guides him towards the soft lamplight of the bakery, leaving you alone with the embers' quiet song. The tools hang silent on their hooks, shadows stretching long and peaceful across the familiar ash-dusted floor. That tiny lopsided bubble of vitro giallo rests on the marva, cooling slowly beside a perfectly formed goblet. The old and the new, the imperfect and the honed, all held in the same patient light. The roar has faded to a deep contented purr, the fire settling into its rest like a great slumbering beast. No more frantic gathers, no more hissing steam, no sharp tang of fear or desperation in the air. Just the gentle crackle of dying olive wood, a sound as old as Murano itself, and the soft rhythmic sigh of the lagoon kissing the foundations outside. The scents mingle comfortingly, the sweet, charred perfume of the embers, the faint, clean aroma of cooling glass, and the ever-present, salty breath of the sea, carrying away the day's faint traces of dust and effort. Your scarred hand rests on the warm brick of the furnace surround, feeling its enduring strength, a connection forged through decades of flame and creation. The memories swirl like motes in the dim light, the searing terror of the first furnace, the weight of Enzo's keys, the chilling silence after Pietro fell, the surprising warmth of Lucio's dough-smeared fingers offering solace, the impossible lightness of your first successful goblet, the profound simplicity of Marco's wonder. They don't clash, they blend, annealed by time into a single glowing narrative held within these walls. The debts are paid, the secrets kept or shared, the fire tended and passed on. Outside, Venice murmurs her eternal, watery lullaby. The last embers glow like captured stars in the dark hearth. You close your eyes, not to sleep just yet, but to simply be within this quiet hum, this deep, resonant peace, where flame and water, past and present, craftsmanship and love, finally find their perfect, unhurried balance. The heat cradles you, gentle as a sigh, deep as the lagoon, promising that while the fire may bank, the warmth it forged endures.